Showboating Sports, guys. It's your man Scott Free here. Man, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll just keep on rolling with this thing. So today's show is about Errol Spence on the Porter Way podcast today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my breakdown on it, on what I thought about the interaction with Errol and Shawn Porter was, and the overall my thought process on it. So if you guys, like I said before, if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell icon. And now we're going to keep rolling with the video. All right. So I tuned in today and I watched Errol Spence on there. He came on towards the end of the Porter Way podcast. Now, I'm going to start this video off by saying, just really breaking it down and talking about the two major things that stuck out to me is about the awkwardness between Errol Spence and Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter came on. He said, hey, Errol. He addressed Errol and said, they said that I have been kind of hating on you. He said, what do you think? What do you think? You think I've been hating on you? Errol was like, yeah, just a little bit, And I don't think Errol really wants to go there. I think it's an awkward feeling because he beat Shawn Porter. But I'll tell you what. There is an awkwardness between the two, and Shawn Porter is a little irritated with Errol Spence that I see throughout a lot of his interviews and a lot of things that he say. I think that a little bit of blame, because Shawn Porter is really a nice guy. Let me talk highly about Shawn Porter, because like I said, I'm not here to dog either person, but I want to just show you what I spotted out on this. Shawn Porter is a really down-to-earth good guy, man. He seems like he loves everybody. And he seems like he's the type of person that wants to see everybody do very well, right? Now, Shawn Porter, with that same nice guy mentality, he's a beast in the ring, right? But I think that when Errol Spence and Shawn Porter on the lead up to the fight, they kind of had a little bit of head bumping, which all fighters do, right? And I think that some of the things that Errol Spence said, Shawn Porter took it a little bit more personal than normal, which is good. I am so happy that Errol Spence did that. But let me just, and I'll go into that why in just half a second. But I see that Errol said that Shawn Porter is a dirty fighter. He swims like he's fighting and that kind of stuff. He's kind of wild in the ring, which what Errol Spence said was really true. It really was. And I think Errol was ready for a dog fight. I think that Errol knew there was going to be a grimy, in the mud type fight where they were going to be banging and bumping heads and stuff like that. So I think Errol was preparing himself and mentally being ready to go to war, right? And I'm so happy that Errol did that, because if you guys want to really break it down and really think about it, that's the best Shawn Porter the world has ever seen. Shawn Porter was so focused in that match between Errol Spence. He was totally in shape, like any other time you've ever seen. He was so cued in. He was so zeroed in that it just seems like a whole totally different fighter. If that version of Shawn Porter had showed up between Keith Thurman or Ugas even, right? I think Shawn Porter would have done damage to Ugas. I think Shawn Porter did the wrong game plan fight towards Ugas because he tried to box him, right? Shawn Porter shouldn't have never got away from what makes Shawn Porter in that fight. Now, I kind of slightly give the edge to Ugas only because I think that Ugas did a little bit more. I think that he kind of outboxed Shawn just a hair, very slightly. So I'm not even upset that Shawn Porter got the nod, but I kind of give the nod to Ugas because of that. And plus, I think that Ugas got a knockdown with Shawn Porter. I think that should have been called a knockdown. But I'm not taking anything away from Shawn Porter. But I think that Shawn Porter went in it with a different game plan than he should have. But if he had fought Ugas the way he fought Errol Spence, I don't even think it would have been. I think it would have been a unanimous decision on Shawn Porter to beat Ugas. I really do. That version of Shawn Porter is the best version of Shawn Porter I've ever seen. If he fought Kell Brook like that, he would have won that fight. You know what I mean? I think that he fought Bud, but I don't think that when Shawn Porter fought Bud, he was as zeroed in as he was with Errol Spence. I think with Errol Spence, the personal things he said about him, just in the boxing. He didn't really go outside of boxing, but he was just like, attacking his skills, saying that he's a dirty fighter. And I think that right there got up under Shawn Porter's skin, and that made him bring it all around. I think it was the total top motivation. But I think that when he got with Bud, I think that his motivation wasn't there as it was with Bud. I think that fight between Bud had marinated a little too long, because I think at the end of Shawn Porter's career, that fight came in a little too late. I think that him and Bud was really cool. I didn't see that version of Shawn Porter with that serious dog in him. Not saying that he was a pushover in that fight, but I just didn't see that reckless abandonment that he did with Errol Spence with Bud. And I think if he went with that attitude in mind, he would have done a lot more damage. I think with him being out the ring a little bit, with him being married, his kid, and working the Porter Way podcast, and all the other things that comes with being a successful fighter when it starts coming in, I think that's what kind of doused Shawn Porter's fire just a little bit. Enough to say that that gave Bud a little bit better version, a little bit easier version of Shawn Porter than some of the previous opponents. But I'm not taking anything away from Bud. Bud is an incredible fighter. Bud is my pound for pound number one fighter. But Spence is my pound for pound number one welterweight. And I do give Spence the nod at beating Bud. I really do. I think that Spence will outperform Bud. I give it to Bud as being number one pound for pound is because him moving in weight classes, and plus he has already been undisputed in a previous weight class at 140. So that's why I give it to him. But I break that down and say that Shawn Porter and Errol Spence still has this little awkwardness. I don't think Shawn has made it to the point where he really let that go. I think that Shawn kind of opened up a little bit on the Porter Way podcast, and you can see he's slightly moving past it. And I think that later on down the road, you'll see both of those guys get totally past it once their careers are kind of over with. If Errol stays in the limelight, I think that once Errol retires, he'll probably disappear from sight, kind of like a Marvin Hagler type deal. I'm not sure. I hope not, because I think Errol Spence is a wonderful person in and out the ring, and I definitely think Shawn Porter is a wonderful person, but I think Shawn Porter is going to be more out to do what he's doing. But also, let's talk about the Errol mind frame on that Porter Way podcast as well. I think it's a little bit awkward feeling. I think Errol doesn't want to rock too many boats. I think his mind is more onto Ugas. And the reason why I say that is that everything is Ugas. He's not really talking about older fights. He doesn't really want to push any buttons because he's already past it. He beat Shawn. I don't think it's no bragging thing in Errol Spence. I do think that Errol respects Shawn. I think that version of Errol Spence was, with him fighting Shawn Porter, was not the best Errol Spence. I think, as Spence said, he was doing a fat camp. And I think the Errol Spence game plan was a little wrong for Shawn Porter. Not meaning wrong that he couldn't beat Shawn Porter, but I think his game plan was just to go in there, that they said on the show that they both went in to brawl. He said that when Derek James was giving him instructions in the ring, he was acting like, yeah, I'm going to do this. But deep down in his mind, he knew he was going in there to go brawling with Shawn Porter. And I think that he made the fight a little harder on himself. I think that if he boxed the fight a little bit better, and done things a little bit differently, it would have been a different outcome, maybe a little bit more decisive victory. It wouldn't have been as close. I didn't have the knockdown being the deciding factor. I had Errol already slightly ahead anyway, just very little. I think that the knockdown I think for the people who were kind of on the fence, I think that did take them over. I also think that Errol, like I said, he was doing the fat camps and stuff. And I think after the wreck, I think Errol now has a different take on life, that knows how fragile life can be, and that he wants to straighten up and do things a different way and leave a really good legacy. I think he had enough time to reflect and look over the things he did wrong, and also see how these other fighters are getting it right, like a Shawn Porter. And what I mean by them getting it right is how they trying to stay in shape even outside. And Shawn Porter even addressed that too. Errol was saying that he fought in Vegas one time and that he was trying to make weight, and he said he wasn't sweating. And he said he went in and talked to trainers, and they were like, man, you're not going to sweat. It's Vegas. It's a little dry out here. So anytime you sweat, it's going to immediately evaporate. Then Shawn Porter went on to say that, he had time that he had to run in a sauna suit or a scuba diving suit just to get all that water weight out. He said that they both agreed that you find a way to get in shape and stay in shape, and do that instead of going out, falling out of shape and getting back. And I think a lot of young fighters do that because they get so happy with I've made it, the money, the fame, and everything else that comes with it. They tend to not take it as serious because they've been doing it their whole life, And that's why I get mad when I see fighters dodging so many other fighters, because it's not just holding up the sport, but it's also these fighters dedicated their lives to this, and they all deserve a chance to prove what they've been working on for so long. They need to know if they're the best. They need to know where they rank in their division, with their peers. They need to know where they rank right now in this point in history and where they rank throughout previous history. So I don't think that when fighters dodge fighters, that's a good thing. So I always hold fighters accountable for that reason. And Shawn Porter and Errol Spence are true examples of that, of how fighters evolve. You got someone like Bud, who always stays in shape. Floyd Mayweather, who always stays in shape. Those guys who have been dedicated, they have a little different love than I think most of the people have. And I'm not saying a better love or any of that. I think their love is a little different, to whereas they have they see the vulnerability in their game, and that is a spot in their game that they uplift themselves as becoming not just being a good boxer, but a great boxer. And all boxers, and Andre Ward said it best, is that when you're doing bad things out the ring, it will eventually catch up with you. It might not be today, but it will later if you keep doing them. And I think Errol has corrected that. I think Shawn corrected that. But I think Shawn corrected his a little right before his last few matches. But I think that at this point, I think Shawn was at the point in his career where he was about ready to hang up the gloves anyway when he took on his last match. But I think he really wanted another great fight and wanted to go out on top. I just hate that it came at the last fight of his career. I hate that it didn't come like directly behind the Spence fight, because Shawn's next fight, he was still geared in. But I think that layoff through the epidemic, the pandemic, the pandemic and stuff, I think that there was a lot of times that fighters took time off to themselves, spent time with their families and stuff, and I think it gave a lot of people time to think in different perspectives. But guys, like I said, check out the interview. It's over on the Porter Way podcast. It was a great interview, but that's my breakdown of it. And I think that Shawn Porter and that Errol Spence really, once this is all over with and said and done with, I think they'll make amends. I don't think it's really a beef or a problem between them, but you can still see the awkwardness in between them. But I do see the respect there. I think that the person that Errol may not ever sit down to and be really cool with is Keith Thurman. I think that he has rubbed Errol the wrong way, and on a way that Errol might not get over that, because Earl's more of, I could care less, I'm not around him. And I think with them not being around each other, that will be a hard thing to repair. But I think that Errol still has some more fight left in him. And with Shawn being on being a commentator, him and Errol going to have to keep crossing paths. And I think at some point in time, that awkwardness will leave a little bit more. And I just think that I don't call Shawn Porter a hater. By far, he's not. But I think Shawn Porter is a little irritated by Errol. And I think that some of the things is he's kind of, you know. But I think that Shawn's a really good guy, man. And Earl's a really good guy, man. And those two guys are really good champions, man. I respect those guys. Salute Errol. Salute Shawn. And, yeah, guys, that's straight up, no chaser. And if you guys not part of my channel or not subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe, the like and share button, and hit the notification bell. And until next video, guys, I'm out.